Hi everybody, I wanted to come at you with a video about the Ryan Corporation problem in your homework. This is the Ryan Corporation problem, okay? There are two of these in your homework, and that's really just to give you the chance to kind of do two of them at the same time. Now there's also a Punta problem in your homework, the Punta Corporation. That is extra credit, okay? If you have any questions on which problems to do, check Blackboard or email me. This is the Ryan Corp problem, and let's just go over kind of what the problem is asking, and then also expectations that I have for you guys to complete this homework. So the first thing to note is that we're given a lot of information about this corporation as it relates to the production of auto steering systems. So this is like a company that produces steering systems for cars. We're given direct materials cost, direct labor cost, and machine hours, and then we're also given total overhead cost, split out by department. Okay, and the total overhead cost is $730,000. And you can get that by adding up these costs. We're going to go through these details in just a moment, and we're going to walk through kind of how to look at each piece of the problem. But I want to make something really clear. I give you the spreadsheets as a tool to work through these problems. So I want you to be thinking about your inputs. I want you to think about, go to the homework software, read the facts, and make sure you have a grasp on what's being given to you, okay? I've laid out the facts in a different way from how I laid it out in the spreadsheet, okay? Just slightly different, and it's really just because it's a whiteboard. And I wanted to kind of explain it from a different angle. I would encourage you guys, use your spreadsheet, but also, if it helps, diagram out what's happening. Write some notes on the side for yourself. What you're trying to do is take all these, take kind of like a single block of text, pull it apart into various puzzle pieces, and then what we're learning how to do in this course is how to put those puzzle pieces back together to come to a kind of more methodical understanding or a methods-driven understanding of our cost picture, okay? And the methods that we're learning about are kind of how to take this total overhead cost and apply it to each job, and we're using these overhead rates to do it, okay? So the spreadsheet is a tool, but you still need to do a lot of kind of critical thinking, analysis, laying out of data on your own. Okay, that's an expectation I have for you guys. You should treat this, each problem, you should treat almost like a task you were given at work. You're going to have to really lean into some of this work, okay? Now, the problem that we're given, we're told is each auto steering system has a per unit cost of $399 of direct materials. And then we're told direct labor is $775 per unit. We're also told that it takes 25 labor hours to put together one of these units and 20 machine hours, okay? So one auto steering unit requires this information. Then we're given information about the labor and machine hours. We're told, okay, from a departmental perspective, because it takes two departments to make one of these steering systems, it's 15 labor hours from Department A and 10 hours of labor from Department B. So the 25, this is basically a breakout of the 25 total hours. Similarly, of the 20 machine hours, 5 machine hours come from Department A, 15 machine hours come from Department B, okay? So this is going to help us. This is cost driver information. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking this $730,000 total overhead cost, and we're going to be looking at how we can use cost driver information to push this total cost down to each unit, okay? We want to get a per unit understanding of how the overhead shakes out. We're going to see it's going to be different depending on if we use labor or machine hours. And that's why you have 4 steps in this problem, because we're going to be going through each of these in sequence. Now, a couple things to point out. You are given this data in the problem. You have to basically compute that it's $730,000 of total overhead cost. Second thing, just a note about some of the terms that you're being introduced to in this course. Prime costs, this is prime costs, the cost that we can directly trace to each unit. Well, we can trace materials and direct labor. Imagine an auto steering system, the metal, the screws, things that we can actually physically tie to a unit. And then the actual person working at the unit. So putting something together, you can imagine a person actually physically working on that unit. We can directly tie prime costs to the unit. Conversion costs are the costs that it takes to convert the materials into the finished product. And that conversion costs are going to consist of labor and machinery and other overhead costs. Okay, so these are conversion costs. Just a note about the terminology. Assume that total factory was applied on the basis of direct labor hours. Okay, so imagine that you have 25,000 labor hours over here. Okay, you've got 25 hours of labor times 1,000 units for 25,000 labor hours. What we're going to be looking to do is push the $730,000 total overhead down into each hour so that we can get a total per labor hour cost of overhead. Okay? And we're going to do that math over here. $730,000 divided by 25,000 labor hours means that we have a $29.20 rate. That means that every labor hour put into a single unit is going to drive $29.20 of overhead cost into that unit. Number two, a factory overhead rate were applied on the basis of machine hours. What would be the plant-wide overhead rate? We're going to go through the same exercise here. We have 1,000 units times 20 machine hours per unit. So now we have 20,000 hours that we're going to use to push as the allocation base for the $730,000. So we want to take the $730,000, push it down into those 20,000 hours, and we get a $36.50 overhead rate per machine hour. Okay, so that's parts 1 and 2. What we've just done is we've figured out a way to take this big all-in $730,000 cost and push it down into each unit made. And we're doing that using labor hours or machine hours. Okay, so for number 3, what we're going to do is we're going to look first at applying the overhead rate to each department based on labor hours, okay? So Department A has 15 labor hours, Department B has 10 labor hours. What we want to do is we want to pull this $29.20 overhead rate, okay, into, this is part 3, okay? And we're going to use this rate and basically see how much overhead gets pushed into each department based on our labor overhead rate. Okay? Part 3, number 2, we're going to do the same thing, except we're going to use machine hours. So we're going to have to pull the $36.50 rate in and apply that against the 5 hours for Department A and the 15 hours for Department B. Okay? Okay, so part 4 asks us to kind of pause and kind of take a look at 2 new rates on a departmental basis, okay? The first part of part 4 is compute the departmental overhead rate and amount of applied overhead for Department A using direct labor hours. Okay, let's first look at that. We need to go back to our total overhead costs for each department. Department A is going to be $388,000. So what we need to do is we need to take our 15,000 hours in Department A based on labor. Now, where do I get the 15,000 from? 15 hours times 1,000 units. 15,000 labor hours in Department A, and we're going to use those hours to allocate the $388,000 cost. That's part 1 of problem number 4. Part 2 of problem number 4 is going to be similar, except now we're going to use the 15 hours of machine hours for Department B. Okay, and again, 15 times 1,000 is really 15,000 total hours. And we want to allocate the total overhead costs for Department B. Okay, and we saw what this was. It's $342,000. It's part of our upfront facts.